Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. It is absolutely a beautiful day out today. The sun is shining, there's not a cloud in the sky. It's almost 70 right now, and it's warm enough to start breaking a sweat. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because that's all about to change here in the Ozarks and in many places in the Midwest, because they are predicting a cold front coming through tonight and possibly up to 2 inches of snow tomorrow on April 20th. It's not completely unheard of to get snow this late in the year. It does happen occasionally. It's still very rare, but I think the real rare fact is if we were to get that much snow, that is rare. Occasionally we get a little light dusting. You know, you might wake up in the morning in a mid to late April and get just a little bit of a dusting of snow, which I kind of think that's probably all we're going to get. But who knows? If we get 2 inches of snow and they're calling for it throughout the morning, that would be pretty significant this late in the year. So we'll see how that goes. And they're calling for, tomorrow night down in the 20s. More of this crazy weather that's happening all over the planet. Anyways, I wanted to talk to you today about coming out of the closet. That's right. I think myself and you and many others need to finally just come out of the closet. Just come clean with what you are. And maybe, just maybe, that's one of the problems here in the United States and around the world, is that we have not come out of the closet fully. And I'll get to that in just a minute of what I mean by that. And I promise this won't be just strictly a rant video. I will talk about some, I guess, tips, not really tips, but just some thoughts on preparedness and survival and homesteading towards the end of this video. Before I get started with all that, I want to mention, as I do every once in a while, a really great company that can help you out in your preparedness journey, and that's called My Patriot Supply. And you can find them at preparewithtravis.com. I've partnered with them. They make amazing quality and value emergency long-term freeze-dried food. And you can go to preparewithtravis.com and you can find products and food buckets. Buy it by the month. Usually is most of the buckets 2-week supply, 1 month supply. And they make some really good quality stuff and about the best price per calorie out there on the market today at preparewithtravis.com. All right, so what do I mean by this? Is Travis getting ready to break some scandalous news about himself? About coming out of the closet? No, what I mean is that we as patriotic, conservative, traditional value, libertarian, constitutionalists, biblical worldview, Judeo-Christian values, whatever you want to classify yourself. I can't keep track of all the labels. I mean, even we on the kind of the right-leaning put labels on ourselves. Whatever you want to label yourself. We need to come out of the closet of what we are and what we believe and stop hiding. Now that's risky. I'm going to just say right off the bat, it's risky nowadays to come out and say, yeah, I'm a patriot. I believe in traditional family values, and I believe in the Bible. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in individual liberty. I believe in the free market. I believe in capitalism. I believe in individual liberty and the individual person that he has a sovereign right over himself and his body and what he does, him or her. I believe that we should have the freedom to do as we please as long as we don't infringe upon someone else's personal liberties. These types of ideas that once were the prominent ideas, the prominent beliefs, the prominent philosophies in this nation, which is really what made this nation what it is. I understand that America has a lot of failings, not just now, but throughout our entire history. We've done a lot of bad things. We've done wrong things. And I'm not trying to cover any of that up. But the fact is that through all of that, Americans, we the people here in the United States, we have lived our lives for the most part based on those principles that I've mentioned. And all of a sudden, in the last few years, it's become, well, it's become completely out of fashion and unfavorable to live that way, to believe that way. It's become uncool, unpopular, whatever the term is. And so now it's to the point that people are losing their jobs. Families are excommunicating themselves from other family members. Kids are getting kicked out of school or getting, bullied at least in school. It's becoming difficult for people to maintain friendships and relationships and just because of what we believe. And maybe this isn't for everyone, and I understand you have to base your decisions for your life based on your circumstances and whatever threat level that you're willing to embrace. But as much as you can, at least from my opinion, I believe that we need to stand firm on these. We cannot back down. We cannot back down from biblical principles. And for those of you that watch this show and that are considered a conservative, patriotic, prepping, homesteading, all those different things we talk about, but yet you don't necessarily align with the Bible, I'm not excluding you. But the fact is that this nation was the first and only that was founded on these principles, not on Europe's and the European big church's view of the Bible, not on any other nation's view of religion or anything like that. It was based in large part on biblical principles, and we are losing that. We've turned away from that, and I believe that because we've turned away from these biblically based principles of freedom and the right to choose your own path and the right to protect yourself and the right to personal property and the ownership, I believe because we have walked away from these, we are now seeing the ramifications of that. That's what's happening in America. We're seeing flat-out Marxism. Flat-out Marxism is sweeping this nation, and I believe starting with our young people, and it's converting them basically to this evil Marxist philosophies, and convincing them that it is the better way to choose, and everything from racial issues and BLM and transgender and the growing government and the big brother and the destruction of our rights and our liberties, everything that we are seeing, the cancel culture, and on and on. It's Marxism. It's plain and simple is what it is. Some of you are old enough. I would guess my age or older, and I'm 43. So I would say most of you my age and older are probably old enough to remember growing up in a time where American principles and our founding fathers' ideas and the ideas of liberty and the ideas of free market were actually still being taught. Now, I went to the first few years of school, I went to a private school and then moved into homeschooling. So I understand my education was a little bit different than most, public school kids. But still, we grew up in an era, maybe the last of our kind, but we still grew up in an era where our founding fathers were still being taught, and the reasons why they did what they did, and standing up to England and the British Crown, and establishing the nation in the way they did, and establishing and acknowledging that humans have certain inalienable rights, and that a government's true, purest job is to protect those rights. We grew up, learning these types of things, and our parents and our grandparents also. You're probably old enough, if you're old enough, you probably also remember when that started to change in the public schools, when they started taking away teaching about Thomas Jefferson and James Adams and George Washington and the Continental Congress and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, they started taking that out of schools. And I can remember when I was younger, hearing people talk and say, this is setting us on a very dangerous path, that this removing this from our education system and not teaching children these principles of what we stand for as a nation and why we stand for these things and how we came about standing for these things. What was the process? Why we're doing what we're doing, why we did what we did. When that was removed, I remember many people starting to say, this is dangerous. This is putting us down a very dangerous path that someday in the future, there's going to be a generation that rises up and they have no concept of individual liberty. They have no concept of the free market. They have no concept of what our founders went through to get us to where we are today, and then why we did it that way, and why this nation has been so prosperous and blessed. I remember many people at that time saying, almost like a prediction, that there will come a day when there will be a nation, a generation rising up that doesn't know these things. And guess what, folks? We are living in that generation right now. The young people of this generation have not been taught at all. Other than the very few that have been taught this at home, the vast majority of young people, teenagers and early 20s, have never been taught these philosophies, have never been taught capitalism, free market. They've never been taught individual liberty. They've never been taught what our founding fathers, who they are, what they did, why they did what they did, what they went through to do what they did. These ideas have never been taught to many people today. They have no concept. All they've been taught are that these people were bigots, they were misogynistic, they were racist, they were awful people, they established this system that perpetuated systemic racism. That's what they're taught today, okay? And that we should be ashamed. We should be ashamed of these things. That's what's being taught in school. In fact, so much so that we have an ambassador to the United Nations, folks. We have an ambassador to the United Nations that spoke in front of the United Nations, spoke in front of our friends and our allies and our adversaries, China and Russia and Cuba and Iran and all these other nations. And they spoke in front of them, and all that person did, all this appointed ambassador from Joe Biden to the United Nations, all she did was trash talk the United States about how awful our history is, how awful we are. We're trying to improve, is what she said, but we're just awful. We're an awful nation. We should be ashamed of ourselves. For the first time, that was done on a global international stage. That is where we are today. And we're seeing right now, folks, every day in the news, around us, the children, the mentality of people, the insanity. Have you ever just stopped and just watched people? And I'm not talking on the news just alone. I mean, certainly online and social media, but just look around you. It's like, where's decent values gone? Do you not have a little bit of pride in yourself, a pride in your nation, and a little bit of self-worth, and a little bit of human decency? Where's all that gone? Well, it all went away when we started teaching this very corrupt and evil ideology of Marxism, and socialism, and communism, and atheism. It's awful. The children that are being raised in this stuff, it's disgusting. There's a video, and I strongly considered showing this video today. And I don't know if YouTube would have allowed it. I don't know if it would have got me, but I decided not to because it's just a grotesque video, I guess is the best way to put it. It's going around on Twitter. And if you want, I guess I can find the link to it and send it to someone individually. But I've decided not to post it publicly. And it's in a nightclub. Let me set it up. This woman is in a nightclub in LA. And it's like, she says it's 11:30 at night. And it's in a I don't know if it's in a gay nightclub. I don't know what it is, but they have drag queens dancing at this nightclub. You know, these men that have mental illnesses, and they're dressed up as women, and they're dancing very provocatively and mostly unclothed. And she shows the video. She's sitting, you can tell she's sitting at a bar or a table or whatever, and she's cussing and cussing because she's upset at what they're doing. Now she's at this place, obviously enjoying, that kind of atmosphere, but even she is upset because she says they've crossed the line. And she shows, and they have brought up two young girls on stage, all dressed up. And they appear to be, and I have children, so I'm pretty good at guessing their age. And I would say one is probably around 8-ish, and the other one maybe around 10, 11 at the tops. These two young girls, and they're they're up there with the drag queen at 11:30 at night in LA at a club where there's drinking and lascivious lifestyle being spread around. And they're up on stage dancing around with this drag queen, and people are throwing money at them and screaming and hooping and hollering, and the little girls are in provocative stances, and they're picking up money and everything, and they're cheering them on. That's the world that we live in now. That is encouraged. That is looked upon as good parenting. To teach your child at 10 years old to be a drag queen, to cross-dress, and get up on stage and strip in front of people. This is the world that we live in. It's because we've turned away from these founding principles. We've turned away from moral values. We turned away from the Bible. We turned away from the Constitution. We turned away from traditional family values. And now we see where we're at today, okay? So, I guess your choices, you can hide away. You can be a hermit, find you a cave, a piece of property, and pray that you can just live there long enough to raise your family up, to raise your children, and just kind of hide away. I mean, that's one possibility. And I don't think anyone on here is going to look down upon someone that would take that path, of hiding away and just getting away from society. I mean, I'm kind of I don't like being around a whole lot of people myself, so I can understand that. But I don't think that also means hiding who we are. I don't think that means taking our principles and what we stand for and stuffing them in a closet so that no one can see them. And so that's why I say we need to come out of the closet. We need to be willing to stand up. It's dangerous. Freedom is dangerous. It is absolutely. Tyranny can be pretty safe for the most part. Freedom is dangerous. It's an animated contest of freedom. Thomas Jefferson said that the blood of patriots and tyrants is what feeds the tree of liberty. Not just tyrants, but patriots and tyrants, indicating that liberty, really the only way to truly have it, is through the shedding of blood from the men and women fighting for it. So it most certainly is not a safe strategy. But I think in the long term, if we hope to have anything to pass on to our children or our grandchildren, it is the best strategy to actually take a stand. And I'm not saying get out in public and wave banners and all that. That's not what I'm saying, because that's not even my style. What I'm saying is don't shy away from when there's opportunities to speak up and say, well, yes, I am a man of God. Well, yes, I do believe in the Constitution, and I do believe that we have individual rights and liberties, and I do believe that the government has no business invading my privacy and telling me how to live my life and raise my children. Well, yes, I do believe I have a right to self-defense, and I do believe that I have a right to defend my liberties from a tyrannical government, and I do believe that I have a right to purchase and own the tools necessary to do that. I do believe that I have a right to live on my land and to do as I please as long as I don't harm another. I do believe I have these rights. I have a right to teach my children that there's only one man and one woman, and that's how it's meant to be, and that's what it was in the Bible, and that's how we were created to be. I do believe that, and I do believe that I have a right to do those things. It's time we stand up, and I'm calling on you men specifically. How many of you said, man, if we only had a Patrick Henry like we did back in the colonial days, well, if we only had a Thomas Jefferson, well, if we only had a Samuel Adams, Sir, you can be that Patrick Henry. You can be that Samuel Adams. You can be that George Washington. You just have to have the courage to take a stand. And I understand. I'm not calling you a coward. I'm not calling you weak. But it's a little scary that we live in this world. Most of us probably never thought it would be taken this far, at least this fast. But the fact is that we are here. And you may get canceled, you may get deleted, you may get ostracized, you could even lose your job. There are a lot of things could happen to you. But we also have to think about what we're leaving to our children. And so I would encourage you to at least consider taking a stand and coming out of the closet. Now, I told you and I promised you that I'd bring along a little homesteading and prepping tip, or thought at least, along with this. There's been a few videos, I even made a video talking about it. There's been a few other videos I've seen other YouTube channels talking about how the average prepper would not survive a true SHTF. And I said in the last video when I talked about this, I disagreed with that. And so I want to clarify that. Probably that's true, but I don't believe it's because they're not fully prepared. I don't believe it's because they don't have enough food stocked up. I don't believe a prepper would not survive, or that a preparedness person would perish because they don't have enough food stocked up, or they don't have enough tools, enough guns, enough bullets, enough equipment, or whatever. That's not why I think one would perish. I believe one would perish because they don't have the mindset. And while I encourage you to prepare your life and your homestead every day as much as possible, just keep moving forward, if it's baby steps, it's baby steps. But continue preparing yourself as much as you can for what's coming at us in the future, in the near future and distant. I believe that the key to true survival, the key to truly being able to prevail over the things that are happening in this world, is not the stuff that we have, but the mind and the heart that we have. Humans, throughout all of human history, really up until just recent times, have existed without all this stuff. Think of the early pioneers coming across out west. Many of them had very little supplies, and what supplies they did have only lasted a short amount of time. Most of what they did to live off the land and to survive and to prosper was because of the grit that they had, because of the strength, not just in their back, but in their mind, the strength to overcome, the strength to survive, no matter what life threw at them. We've seen that also in smaller or regional SHTFs, whether it be a hurricane or a tornado or a massive earthquake or volcanoes, or even governments collapsing and dollars hyperinflating. Sure, lives have been lost and things have been lost in those, but many, many people did survive, and they survived because they had the will to survive. And that's the key. You have to have a true mindset, that battle warrior mindset, and the heart to go along with it. And if you have that, and if that's all you have, I believe that you're way more prepared than someone that's got all the stuff but doesn't have the mind and the heart. So while you're on your journey of collecting your gear and putting food back and putting equipment back and learning skills, remember, the most important thing that you can do to prepare yourself for the world tomorrow is the mindset that you have and the heart to go along with it. If you can develop that warrior mindset, that you can survive no matter what life throws at you, then my friend, you're much more prepared than the average person. And in that way, I believe that the average prepper is capable of surviving an SHTF, no matter how big it is. All right, folks, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.